I'm a lean, mean speed thingy.
You're listening to the podcast, So There I Was. It's how all great aviation tales begin. This show is episode 54, You Quit or Move Forward. How profound is that, Fig?
Well, it's pretty darn profound. And when you listen to the episode, you'll get why. Holy cow. What an outstanding individual, Punchy, Brian Shul.
We did struggle with some titles on this too, right? And Punchy brought his A game to us tonight, and it was so much fun to talk to this gent. He is, folks, go look it up on the internet if you'd like to look on YouTube. He is the man who was in the cockpit on the night of what they call speed check, and we didn't bother asking him that story because it's out there on the internet, and you can go find it and listen to it, and it's great and it's funny. But he flew everything from reciprocating T-28s in Vietnam, where he was downed and almost died, spent a year recovering, told he'd never fly again. And out of that came the quote, "You quit or you move forward." The top doc in the Air Force came to him and said, "I like your attitude. I'm going to give you a shot."
He's got hours in the A7. He's one of the first 11 pilots to ever fly the A-10. And then he's only one of 90 pilots ever to fly the SR-71.
And the irony there to me is the A-10 is probably the slowest tactical jet ever to fly. And the SR-71, to this day, 60 years after its initial design, is the fastest jet in human history.
Well, only if you count 32 miles a minute fast.
Literally faster than a bullet. Right. And this episode comes at you fast, but it lasts long. This is a bit longer than most. It's an hour and 45 with Punchy, but I'm telling you, the time flew by. It was so much fun, and we hope you enjoy listening to this episode half as much as we did. This was a blast.
Hang on, because it comes at you at 32 miles a minute.
At least.
At night.
So sit back, relax. Don't sit on the ejection handle.
Don't do it.
Here comes Punchy.
On the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that. Thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fun.
So there I was.
Which is how all great aviation stories start. Welcome to So There I Was. This is Fig with my co-host, Repeat. Where are you, Repeat?
Hey, Fig, I'm home tonight for a couple more days, then I'm back off to work. But, wow, we are privileged today to have an amazing guest with us. Our guest today is Brian Shul, former Air Force pilot who flew AT-28s in Vietnam, A-7s, A-10s, and is renowned for piloting the SR-71 Blackbird during the Cold War. Since leaving the Air Force, Brian has become a talented photographer, and I guess you could say he was a talented photographer in the Air Force in the SR-71, and is no stranger to long-range lenses. But he's now the owner of GalleryOnePublishing.com. I've seen some of his photographs online, and truly stunning is an understatement. He's also the author of several books: Sled Driver, Flying the World's Fastest Jet; The Untouchables, Mission Accomplished; Eagle Eyes, Action Photography from the Cutting Edge, the best of the best from the first decade of Mach 1; Blue Angels, A Portrait of Gold; and Summer Thunder. So, wow, that is an inadequate intro at best, but let me say to you, Punchy, call sign, welcome to So There I Was. We're thrilled to have you with us. And I guess I'm going to open up with our first question, which is, how did you become interested in aviation? My guess is, and I think I'm right, that your father might have been a Marine, because I noticed you were born in Quantico, Virginia, and went to East Carolina University.
That's very astute of you to figure that out.
Very astute.
My dad was a Marine, and the short stories that I was pretty sure the Yankees were going to call me up to play third base at some point when I was old enough.
Right on.
But in between, my dad took me to an air show at Andrews, a very big air show, a very good air show that had just about everything flying. And I was privileged to grow up in the 50s when more new jets were coming out every month or so that you can build the model airplane to. So I lived in an era of jet airplanes, bonanza. And I saw my first air show. And I always tell people I kind of lost my virginity to an air show.
There you go.
And grabbed your soul. And I thought, that's pretty amazing. I thought maybe the Yankees would have to wait just a little bit. But then I learned something that changed my life. I asked my dad, I said, well, how do they get to go to all these air shows? What do they do in between? He says, well, no, the air show is not their main job. They're actually Air Force and the Navy pilots. And they just do the air show so we can see their planes. And I said, wait a minute, there's a real job where I could fly airplanes and they would pay me to do this? He said, yeah, that'd be your job. You get to fly jets and they pay you. That's your job. Well, at 8 years old, my life took a new course. I thought, if I could do that for a living. So, of course, I wanted a big Marine F-4 Phantom with the word Marines on the side. And my dad said, no. You're going to fly, go to the service where flying is the primary mission. If you want to carry a rifle, you join the Marines. You want to drive a boat, join the Navy. And under no circumstances will my son be in the Army. But if you want to fly, you join the Air Force. And my dad was right. I got to fly so many more airplanes and had I was in the cockpit for 20 years. I never had a staff job and never did.
Wow. That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't care about being a colonel. I wanted to fly, and I had 5,000 hours of fighter time being in the cockpit for 20 years. The last day I was in the Air Force, I was in a T-38, landed at Beale, and drove off base.
That's awesome.
But it was just a matter of building all the model airplanes, and my parents thought, he'll outgrow this, surely. And, I never did. It was just something that it's hard to explain to people who don't get that bug. They don't get bitten in that way. But when you are, it's the easiest thing to feel and be. And I was fortunate enough to didn't go to the Air Force Academy, didn't have ROTC, I had 0 hours of flying. And wasn't real shiny those first 6 weeks of pilot training. I was a little behind, but I wanted it more than the other guys. And
right.
And I really was dedicated to that dream. And I didn't have a plan B. When I was not doing real well the first few weeks in pilot training, I thought, "Wow, what's your plan B here?" And I didn't have one. So it was kind of sink or swim, and I did. And people like to look at me today and say, well, yeah, he was this SR-71 guy. He must have been a really great pilot and just a tremendous aviator. And I like to tell people that when I started off, I was pretty bad. I didn't know anything. And, I wasn't some gifted natural Charles Lindbergh kind of guy. I had to really work at it hard. And it's a lesson I try to impart to young people and kids and audiences that it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall down, skin your knee. It's not like everybody just aces everything all the way through. I went from number 32 in my class to number 6 as we went through the year there in pilot training. And
wow.
It was just a real joy for me to get to live my dream. And not everybody gets to do that in life. And now that I'm older and I look back on it, I realize how fortunate and lucky I was at every turn, where I could have easily, for example, I was born with a crooked spine pretty badly. And the doctors said, you're not, the worst thing you could ever do is sit in the cockpit of a jet fighter and sit in that seat and pull heavy G loads. You will really hurt your body. And I got in the Air Force, and somehow they needed pilots really bad during the Vietnam era. And couple times I was taking physicals later on, and doctors tried to ground me and say, your spine is out of limits. But I was always in such good shape and everything and very athletic that somebody else would just say, hey, doc, just need to look the other way here on this one. But
Nice.
People ask me why I don't fly anymore today after 20 years of doing that to my body. and then another year with the Blue Angels, and another winter training season with the Thunderbirds. Yeah, I have a lot of aches and pains there that on a spine that never wanted to be in that seat.
Can I back up just for a second, Punchy? Because I had a little technical glitch, and if I miss it, I apologize. What year did you go to pilot training?
In 1970.
1970. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it was near the end of the war over there and everything. When I graduated pilot training, we had like every C-130 and every B-52 assignment in the Air Force. So I had one F-4, and the top guy took that, and there was just nothing on the board unless you wanted a C-130 or above. And I saw that one assignment. It was a special ops thing. It was a T-28 training of foreign nationals, and it sounded kind of interesting. And I thought, well, that's a lot closer to my dream than a B-52 would be. And I wouldn't be in Air Training Command, at least.
So an AT-28 is a tactical version of the T-28.
Yeah. There's a B, C, and D model. I got to fly every single model of the T-28.
Okay.
And great little airplane, just a tremendous for all that it was asked to do.
That looks like a handful of airplane. That is not for amateurs, that one.
It was my Corsair. It was like my Marine Corsair, you know. I mean, and I grew up as a Marine kid. You grew up reading every book on World War II and every flying. I read every flying book. I knew Pappy Boynton's entire life story, you know. And my dad knew a lot of those people, and he was not an aviator, but he was a great Marine, and he was a World War II, Korea, Vietnam vet.
Yeah.
Just had a tremendous career and lived a long life to 93.
What did your dad do in the Marine Corps?
My dad was the head of the Marine band. He was a band officer, which means
that is amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
When you go to war, you are head chief of security. So when he went to Da Nang, he was chief of base security there, took his troops out on patrols and everything, and was real proud to say he never lost a man. And
that is outstanding.
His troops revered him. I have a million stories about my dad. One is that when I was a kid, I asked him, I said, how come the Marines don't have name tags? I said, the Navy and the Air Force and the Army, they have name tags. So I said, how do you tell the people under your command? And he looked at me and really sternly, he said, in the Marine Corps, you know your people. You don't need some silly name tag on the shirt.
I love it.
You know who your people are, and you take care of them, and you don't need a name tag.
That's outstanding.
And I thought, wow, that's really a good answer. I thought, it's interesting. And that's how my dad was. And some of his troops were at his funeral, and they said, your dad helped me go from a 19-year-old kid out of control to adulthood. So he was a great Marine. He took real pride, taught us, as a young child, if people always want to know what things molded me or formed me or motivated me, it was really growing up as a Marine kid, because if you've ever seen The Great Santini and everything, there's a lot of truth to that movie.
Yes.
You don't act subpar. You don't give up. You don't go to your Boy Scout meetings with the wrong uniform on, and
right.
We had a Boy Scout troop master who was a Marine gunny sergeant. So I was a senior Marine for 2 years. I mean, really, you felt like that. And, at the time, we didn't appreciate later in life, when you would not be living on Marine bases and you got out in the real world, you had no concept of how great that training was.
Yes.
And I'll just tell you, for those people who don't comprehend what it's like growing up on a Marine Corps base, when I was 8 or 7, I was throwing rocks up near the railroad tracks one day in Quantico, because I like throwing stuff. I like throwing rocks.
Yeah, boys do. That's what we do.
I was a very good pitcher in Little League.
Yeah.
And I'm throwing rocks, and I'm hoping a train would go by, so maybe I could get the train or something. And this Marine major, I'll never forget, he's in his greens, and he's in this very small little kind of like little Nash Rambler car or something driving by. He screeches to a halt, and he yells out his window, not stop throwing those rocks, or hey, what are you doing? Or hey, kid, come over here. I want to talk to you. None of those things that you would expect. He said, cease and desist that action. I got news people, 8-year-olds do not understand. First of all, the word cease. I never even had heard that. Cease and desist that action. And then he drove off. I went home terrified, and I told my dad, I said, what do these words mean? He said, God, what do I know? And looking back, the greatest education I ever had in my entire life that prepared me for everything was being grown up on Marine Corps bases and being in a Marine Corps Boy Scout troop and going to all those parades and watching them play the national anthem every Sunday, pulling the big flag down, and going to sunset parades there in Washington and learning about history, pride, taking pride in your commitment, your career, and your duty.
How in the hell did you not end up as a Marine Corps aviator?
Well, my dad told me, he said, look, you want to fly. I don't want to see you sitting behind a desk in the Marine Corps after one stint. He said, you will always be a Marine at heart. Do not worry. And, I was, much to the chagrin of the Air Force, I always butted heads with because I was more the Marine guy.
Yes.
And they didn't know how to handle that.
Oh, I totally get that in more than one way. Trust me when you say
I am loved or hated by Air Force people that will tell you about Brian Shul. Yeah, they go like, well, he was just a flaming, guy says he stuck him out his mouth. They couldn't believe it.
That is fantastic.
It prepared you for everything from laying in the hospital almost dying to working out in the gym and taking pride in yourself and never giving up. And I read every one of those Marine Corps books in World War II. That was my whole high school years because I was fascinated by it. And I'd walk into the officers' clubs and see the paintings on the wall. I'd say, what does Quad mean? What is that?
That's a great segue. I'm very intrigued about. So you went through a pilot training and then you got AT-28. So talk us through that.
What were you doing over there in the AT-28? What was that mission like?
Counterinsurgency was a big thing, and what they were doing was training Laotian, Cambodian, and Thai pilots to, they bought all these T-28s from our country, and they were going to use them as counterinsurgency against the Khmer Rouge and everything.
So they were using them as close air support type airplanes?
Yeah. So they needed people to train them in advance, in how to fly the airplane and be safe and everything. And it was a special ops wing and no name, no rank. And they didn't have any American markings on the planes or anything. But mostly we were just training guys. It wasn't always real exciting. Some days it was. But it was near the end of the war, and we weren't supposed to be in Cambodia, so we were like, people denied our existence over there. We worked closely with Air America. They were in the same building right next door to us and everything. But I never wore any rank or name tag in my flight suit for a little over a year over there. And
how about that?
The day my airplane went down, I wasn't even supposed to fly the second go of the day. And I was leaving. I said, I got a handball match at 4:00. I'm going to go home, take a nap. I've been up since 5. So don't bother me. And the guy said, yeah, but you're trying to build hours. You want to get into jets when you get back to the States. You need to build hours. So I turned around and
said, that's always the hook, right? Oh, you got to build hours for something, right? Different job, airline pilot job, something, right?
So I said, okay. I turned around and I took it. And my mission that day was to deliver cadmium batteries to a forward operating location, basically we're real familiar with, south of Thailand. Yeah. It was a very simple thing. I had a real good little airplane, and it was going to zip down there, zip back. And something happened about 10 miles from the field, and the CIA guys, they came briefly later, said they think I was shot down. I don't really care which it was. All I know is I had no throttle, I had no power, and my airplane was just sinking into the jungle, and I was already too low to bail out. There wasn't any option. So I thought, well, this is it. You're going to die and hit the jungle, and there'll be a fireball. It'll just be an awful thing. So just close your eyes tightly, clench your fist, and I always in my talks, I always make a joke and say, I figured I'd wake up in heaven painlessly in a second. And then when I saw the fire,
didn't happen.
When I saw the flames around me, I thought maybe it went the other way. So,
oh shit!
Right on.
Anyway, I quickly got myself out of the plane and that was a miracle in itself. There's about 20 or 25 miracles in my story that had to happen for me to be here today talking.
Hey, Punchy, Punchy, just let's back up for a second. The AT-28 ejecting was not an option. It did not have an ejection seat.
Some of them had a Yankee extraction seat in them, which was some form of ejection. Some just had a hard seat. Mine was the hard seat that day.
Okay, all right. So
you had to stand up and use leg power to get
the
out.
old-fashioned way, which really you needed altitude and airspeed to do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So it was I'd say about 25 miracles had to happen for me to even still be here today. I had like 50 rounds of tracer ammunition in my vest. None of that went off. I had a melted visor, so I did everything blind. I couldn't see. I couldn't get out the right way of the airplane because a tree was there, so now you did everything backwards.
Oh my!
And your connections melted so that the quick disconnect, 40 pounds of quick disconnect pressure for, like, say, a radio comm cord, was now NA because it melted. So
fused together.
Fused. So I did some amazing super universe hero strength things, and I actually broke a comm cord in half to get out of the airplane.
Wow!
It cost me the use of this little finger, but they built a little hinge joint on it, so they couldn't flunk me on the physical. But anyway, that's another story. I got out, and Special Forces guys got to me fairly quickly, and I was kind of in shock, but I wasn't in pain. I just was numb. And so they got me back to Thailand, and then that night a C9 just for me picked me up at Thailand, took me all the way to Kadena to the burn to a hospital where a burn team came from Fort Sam Houston just for me. A 9-man burn team was flown out just for one guy in this room in the hospital there at Camp Cook. And then let the games begin. Unfortunately, the numbness wore off. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was so
your body.
It's where you learned a lot about yourself, life, God, and choices you make. And that's the basis of my talks today. It's about attitude, choices, and perspective. That's my 3 main points. And attitude is something you can't teach, but it's something that's vital to everything you do. And I had a bad attitude first few weeks as I said, please God, let me die. I can't do this. This is really bad. And I went from 180 pounds to 119.
Wow.
And that was, And
over what kind of period, Punchy?
This was about 2 to 3 weeks. But you couldn't fight at that strength. Your strength level was so low, your mental level just said, why am I even fighting? I'll never fly again. I'll never do anything again. My body won't work right again. And this is way too much pain. And I haven't even started the surgery or therapy phase. That'll take a couple of years.
Good Lord.
You just sort of wanted to give up, which was against everything I had just alluded to earlier about being a Scout troop on the Camp Pendleton and being a Marine kid. So there had to come a little reckoning where you had to readjust that attitude, which I did. But I don't ever hesitate to tell people in my talks, this is not a talk about bravery or heroics. It's a talk about reaching rock bottom and realizing the long journey back that's necessary, what you have to do. And then making that choice to do it, because you really only have 2 choices. You quit or you move forward. And it's that simple. Now, it doesn't mean it's the easiest choice. It might be the harder choice. But if you expected to have any life at all, then you better make that turn right at that intersection. So,
did anyone help you on that choice, Brian, or was it? No. Okay. All right.
You've been many long, lonely nights there in the hospital.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of you putting up a fight or not.
And that was in the burn unit at Sam Houston?
Okinawa, yeah.
Oh, in Okinawa.
Yeah. And then they met. Then I got well enough to put me on a C-141 all the way back to San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston there.
Okay.
Which is the burn center. And then I spent about a year there with all the surgeries.
Good Lord.
What was the time? You're never going to fly again. And then once they said you're never going to fly again, I thought, well, why should I do all this therapy? I don't have anything to shoot for. So I pretended in my mind, I put a picture of an airplane up on the wall, and which you weren't supposed to do. And that motivated me. I just pretended I'm going to fly again. And that got me through the therapy. And the nurse was not real happy. But the doctor came in and said, if that picture motivates this guy to keep doing as well as he's doing with his therapy, then leave it up there. Yeah,
what kind of airplane was it that you had on the wall?
I had a picture of an F-106 over the snowy mountains in Alaska. It's some old recruiting poster that I thought was just the coolest picture. And it could have been any picture.
Right.
But I just had to have something.
Right.
And burn therapy, injuries and therapies are so difficult to get through mentally and emotionally that you have to just call on everything you ever learned at every high school coach, every sport you played, and every Marine Corps thing you learned, and being in that Marine Boy Scout troop. I'm telling you, that was good. I'm glad I went through that, because we did those 25-mile hikes, as kids, and we weren't supposed to be doing that. But he said you can do it if you got the right attitude. you
never know why God puts you through things in
exactly.
Until
I really think I was selected to. My mom even said that. She said, "Oh, don't feel bad," but she said you were selected. You were the chosen.
I know, right?
Which was hard to swallow initially, but later
it is so hard.
But it became in time a real. She was so right. My mom. The two finest people I ever knew on the planet were my mom and dad. They were just really great people.
That's amazing. It's amazing to hear you say that.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Without even hesitating. And the people that met them and knew them would say a similar thing. But my mom, she said, I don't believe in miracles. I count on it. And I said, Mom, come on. But now I say that to people. And God has a plan that we're not in control of the universe. We have to... it's how you respond. It's
right.
How you,
right.
Can I interrupt you and just back up for a second and ask you, how long were you at in Okinawa before they flew you to?
It was only a couple months, but it seemed like about 10 years.
A couple months, only a couple months, he says.
Well,
oh my gosh.
I mean, in human time, it was about barely less than 2 months, but in bird patient time, I was about a 12-year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's brutal.
Okay.
You can't do anything for yourself except sit there.
I will not even tell you what went on in those 2 minutes. I will do your show a favor and just say you can do more than you think you can do when you have to, but even when you don't want to.
Well, Punchy, we've had a previous guest on, and he was burned pretty bad as well, and he gave us an insight, and I know my man Repeat also has insight because his son was also a burn victim. So, what an incredible experience!
It is just to this day, it's barbaric.
I like the way you said that it was an incredible experience. You didn't say it was a horror or tragedy or you're a victim, because it really, you could say all those things.
Yes.
You said it was an incredible experience, and you're exactly right. Looking back on it now, I learned more about life, myself, what's important in life for the rest of your life. It was a wonderful crash course in life appreciation and learning. Now, at the time, you said, what a horrible tragedy.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, but on the other side, it's when you have the retrospect.
Well, and I'm lucky enough to still be here to say I have that now, which is why I enjoy sharing I don't like reliving my story so much. I enjoy sharing what I learned from my story with my audiences now, because they always think they're getting an airplane talk. And I go, no, I'm using the airplane as a vehicle to tell a broader story.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, okay, I for the aviator in me wants to. I got a lot of questions, and Repeat. I don't want to get in your way. So, is there anything else you want to cover before I start firing questions? Aviation.
That's it. Yeah. So you let's get into the aviation. You obviously made it back to a cockpit
against all odds. By the way, against all odds.
How did you get there?
May I interject here?
Yes, please do.
It's never done by one man. There's a lot of people helping you along the way that we never mentioned. So I'm just going to tell you one, besides my surgeon, who was the greatest Army burn surgeon guy, loved me. And he said, you are the poster boy for my whole theory that the guys that do their therapy are the ones that are going to improve. Well, one day the Air Force was just pissed off with me because I wouldn't sign the discharge papers.
Nice.
There's no way they could see me coming back to fly. And every medical, they're just across town, 15 minutes away. In San Antonio at Randolph is all the military personnel.
Where they were telling you just to go sign your discharge, you're going to be medically discharged?
They sent them to me. They just sign them because we need to process you because there's no way your doctors said that's the extent of injury. Just forget it.
Great.
No one asked me. No one briefed me. No one talked to me. I just got these things, and I throw them in the trash because they represented to me giving up.
Yeah, failure because
failure mode. Yeah, that was like quitting.
Yeah, so, Marines aren't raised that way.
So there had to be a way. There had to be a way to get over this that I couldn't even see. I couldn't even see a way to even talk back to the Air Force to get back in, and because there's no way I could pass a physical and everything. So I just kept throwing them away. And if you don't think miracles happen, and this is one of 20 or 30, I'll just tell you one. I'm sleeping in my bed one day, and there's a man in an Air Force blue uniform, a full colonel, standing right at the edge of my bed. And he's just staring at me. And I kind of wake up, and I go, "Look, who are you?
Can I help you?"
And he says, are you Brian Shul? You Lieutenant Shul? And I said, yeah. I'm thinking they can't do anything more to me now.
Right.
He said, well, he says, you realize you've pissed off the entire United States Air Force. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you haven't been sending back those discharge papers. So we sent 3 of them now. And so I thought he was like one of the personnel people there. And I said, well, if I do that, it seals my fate. Then what's my plan then? I said, now for me to get through all the therapy they got planned for me, I got to have some sort of goal, even if it's a fake one, that I might get to fly again or something, or just, I know I'll never fly again. I already knew that. So I said, so what's it to you? Who are you? And he said, I'm the chief flight surgeon of the entire United States Air Force. I'm the top doc.
Nice.
His office right there at Randolph. The top flight surgeon of the entire Air Force. He said, and I'll tell you what, I've talked to your doctor, and he says, there's hope for you. And when you think you can pass a flight physical, you come over and I will give you your physical.
Nice.
I sign the top sheet. Nobody will question. But I'll be hard on you. I won't give it. It's not a gimme. And I said, wow, there's hope. So,
right.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Wow, that's a miracle. And I said, why would you do that for me? He said, well, I like your attitude, kid. We need more guys like you in the Air Force. And then he left. And I thought, I never forgot that. And I thought, and my doctor came running in like, okay, let's get to work.
Right.
I thought, geez, oh God, really? I have a plan. I have a goal. And I knew I could never pass this. I wasn't being unrealistic. But that kind of stuff happened all through so it isn't just one man. There were so many doctors, nurses, therapists, and behind the scenes that went to bat for you. And guys at Personnel Center going like, yeah, you can give him a chance, So I took that physical with him one day. It took 2 days. And the little bent finger was the big deal because they were going to amputate these 2 fingers, and they didn't. So they had to put a titanium joint in this one. But the fact that it moves meant they couldn't flunk me because I could grip. You can grasp.
Nice.
If you can grasp the throttles, they can't. Hey, they rebuilt this whole entire hand. They didn't care about that. As long as you could. Yeah, I don't have feeling in half my hand. They didn't even ask me that. But as long as you could grip, you're good to go.
That's
great. The next thing I know, I have they says you have 48 hours to report to A7 training, and I think I had 6 weeks of jet requal at T-38 first, and I was so terrified. I was underweight. I was nervous. I hadn't flown in a year and a half, and I wasn't very good, and I was weak. I was 150 some pounds, but
Punchy, what's your normal fighting weight before that?
Well,
before
when I was
the crash?
flying, it was like 178 when I was flying.
Okay.
And I was just underweight and a little bit weak and just terrified. And I was doing pretty bad in the first few weeks. And but I wanted it so bad. that had a mission. And then as time went on, my body got stronger and stronger. And then I got through A7 training, got to Myrtle Beach, and then we were selected to be in the first A10 squadron. And by then I was coming back to full strength. And then I was on the first A10 demo.
What year did you,
75, 76.
wait, was that when you got back in the airplane?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And then Airman Magazine did that big story, and then my life was never my own again after that. Once you're in Airman Magazine, the whole world in the Air Force knows you. So you'd stop for gas and go in across country, and the Transalert guys would come out and go, "Hey, you're the guy in the magazine."
Wow.
But anyway, I got back, and then I got to instruct in A10s for 4 years in Tucson and do all the air shows and everything. And I got stronger and stronger. And then finally, about 3 years after I got out of the hospital, I didn't even care what I looked like anymore. And I just felt so good because I was healthy. I had 0 internal injuries. I didn't have any inhalation burns, nothing.
That's awesome. Speaking of miracles.
Yeah, my doctor said, "You're young. You can recover from this." He said, "You're going to have to work your arms and hands really a lot, therapy to get the strength back because they were terribly burnt. But I didn't lose any fingers, and I was just lucky at every turn." So I became the Air Force safety guy. I went to all the bases, briefing, safety talk on my crash and how the equipment worked. And it did a lot of good for all the pilots about how your gloves, your boots, your Nomex, everything did. Because no one ever came back from that extent of injury to really brief everyone thoroughly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd go take your A10 and go to Dias, go to Randolph, go here, and you're briefing everybody all over the Air Force. So little did I know I was becoming so well known. I didn't. Here's the irony of ironies. I'm an introvert. I like sitting out in the wilderness in watching my birds all day in the quiet. I'm an introvert. I've never liked being in the spotlight. So now all of a sudden I'm in Airman Magazine. I'm in every safety meeting. They did a film of my safety meeting. Now, so now I hide out. You look behind me here. Yeah, this is my little cave. I hide out in and write my books and I do my photography because I don't crave that.
This is really hard. This is hard for you. I know this because I raised 3 boys that are extroverts and my daughter's an introvert. And
yeah, it's different.
Yes, it's. I thought there was something wrong with us because we
introverts are very talented people.
Yes,
they're very deep. They have good thoughts, so they can get through it. And I read a whole book on it in one day, and I thought, God, that's me. There's hope.
Read a whole book in one day. Did you catch that?
You just don't fit in. You don't fit into your normal activities. Right. The age you're at, but
I totally get it. Can I stop you just for a second? I want to take some notes. A7. How many hours did you get in the A7?
Way too few, man. The greatest little cockpit they ever built in the history of jets, man. What a Cadillac with a plane. Underpowered.
Was it an accurate bomber? And because it's
accurate is the
very
ocean
stable,
web.
right?
Are you kidding? You could drive nails with this thing.
Right.
Very stable bomber.
Everyone that ever flew the A7 will say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It was, what a cockpit.
So how many hours in that? Just give me ballpark.
I had maybe 300 or 400 hours there because we only flew it for a couple of years and they had all those engine problems with that Allison aluminum engine.
Yeah.
And then the A10s come along. They said, your squadron is going to be the first A10s.
So how many hours in the A10 did you get?
The A10 had about 2,200 some. I was Mr. A10. I was doing all the air shows, going all over briefing.
Nice.
And you were was that initial A10s? Initial?
I was the 11th guy in the Air Force to get checked out in the A10.
Well, I call that initial cadre. I don't know about you,
my commander looked at me one day. He said, "Drop an air show routine. You're good at that stuff. Just draw something up."
Oh man!
How about that? Well, that's really what a great airplane.
You look in an A10 today, yeah, they got all that magic stuff in there. We had blank panels, we had nothing in there.
Wow.
We flew by the seat of your pants, reading a map, low level, and shooting the gun. There was no GPS, INS, no magic stuff. No.
Those guys acted as forward air controllers airborne for us over in Korea, and those were talented pilots.
Those
guys were able to develop a 9-line brief, mark it with a Willie Pete, which is a white phosphorus, and then we'd roll in with the heavy bombs. But oh my God, what a tough mission, because it's like the A7 single seat, but there was no such thing as a 2-seat A10 ever, right?
No, we started in solo your first flight. It was generally an easy airplane to fly, but it was difficult to employ with underpowered engines, flying low level, and doing everything by the seat of your pants. Yeah, we killed a lot of guys in the A10. People don't realize in the early days.
Yeah,
a lot of guys were killed in the A10, hit the ground.
Well, that's right. Yeah, it was a low mission too. It wasn't, you weren't up in the stratosphere at all.
No, not at all. And, so then I was supposed to go to a staff job after that, and I fought it right tooth and nail. And I said, look, I'll go to fighter lead in there at Holloman. Nobody wants to do that. Now I'll go there as the first A10 guy to be. You need some A10 influence there. Sure. And they said, yeah, that's good. Okay, so they let me do that. And then from there, I was really going to go to a staff job. They said, you're not getting out of that anymore. And I said, man, where can I go as a senior officer and not, and keep flying? And the SR-71 was one opportunity. The U-2, leader of the Thunderbirds, I wasn't going to do that. And the U-2 guys wanted me. So the SR guys said, gee, with your first pilot time, and yeah, these are the kind of guys we need.
So at this time, Punchy, you're a lieutenant colonel?
No, I'm
Major.
a major. I was never a lieutenant colonel.
Okay.
They were going to make me a lieutenant colonel if I played the game and did
Sure.
So
you weren't an academy graduate either. That was another problem.
I was just a guy that wanted to fly. And so my commander and all
that's not allowed in the Air Force, is it?
Let's just say I was lucky to do 20 years in the cockpit, and I didn't have a wife and kids to put through college, so I could not worry about the money and all that stuff. But
yeah.
I don't know. Life is short, and I don't regret a minute of it. People always go like, well, you should have gone back, got that master's degree, or you should have gone to the staff. You could have been this, could have been that.
Yeah, whatever.
I could have been dead too in the 8
That's
times.
Right.
So
that's right.
In the ground.
Right. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's not the way you live life.
Never.
No, you gotta. Life is short, and it goes by. People miss their opportunity, and
so that's actually one of my questions. We got kind of a transition there. You see the SR-71 as a transition opportunity. You go there. What's it called in the Air Force? It's not the RAG or the FRS. It's the replacement squadron. How do you get
RTU
replacement training?
RTU, the replacement training unit. So the thing is, that airplane is just everything shy of secret. That the fact that it even exists is.
Well, hold on a second. Let's back up a second.
Okay.
How does that even take place? How do you say, I want to throw my name in the hat for that?
That's a good question. I'm sitting in my office one day out of ideas going, oh God, the staff job's coming. I'm going to
out of airspeed, out of ideas.
You're going to
death, baby.
I would get the scissors out now, cut those wrists. So I thought, I just happened to, you're not going to believe this, I just happened to have an Airman magazine in my hand. I looked through and it says U-2 and SR-71 pilots needed, because they really did. They just weren't keeping the flow going.
You got to be shitting me.
A SAC owned those airplanes. So
it's like the help wanted in the back of the magazine.
Right at the squadron. And I said, hey, this is who I am. And he said, oh, man, put your application. We would love to have a guy with your background, but you're intact. You're in tactical air command. They're not letting their guys go to this. And I said, well, man, if you guys want me, we'll figure out a way to do this. So I called Langley, the assignment guy, and the colonel said, if you ever ask that question again, I will personally see that you're court-martialed. You are coming to the staff. And I thought, whoa, wrong number there. I'm not talking to that guy anymore.
Oops, wrong number.
Wrong number.
Just so happened that the wing commander was somebody that I played racquetball with. Like, I was the base champ in racquetball. And so he always would say, pull Shul up the afternoon flight. I want to play racquetball.
Yeah.
And I always
I'm going to beat him today. He's beat me 7 days in a row. Today's my day. Pull him off the schedule, right?
Yeah. And I told him what I wanted to do. He says, you really want to do that? And so then I went to see the general, and the general said, why don't you come be my aide, and I'll take care of you, give you an F-16 after 3 years. I said, yeah, but those 3 years of being your aide will kill me. You know that. Anyway, we sidestepped the colonel was going to court-martial me, and my general called the gun who called the general at SAC and said, look, if you need fighter guys this bad, why don't we just send one per fiscal year and make a deal that someone has to fly that airplane. And everybody agreed on that. So they said, if you can wait 6 months, we're going to send an F4 guy from Seymour Johnson, and then you're next. You're going to be the first A-10 guy to go to that program. But then you had to do a week-long interview and everything, pass an astronaut physical and everything.
Okay.
Week-long interview? Week-long?
Yeah. Well, you do 2 flights in a T-38. You do 2 days of physical at Travis. You do a day of getting to watch the airplane launch, guys suit up and wetting your pants watching the takeoff and everything.
Yeah.
And you get a day in the simulator and you get to actually see it. Yeah.
What was
the sim was great.
Punchy, let me ask you, what were the 2 flights in the T-38 like? What were they looking for? They're
looking to make sure your airmanship. You flew with the wing or the commander and the ops officer, and they're just real stickler SAC guys. I wanted to slap them, a couple of them. Well, you got 200 feet off your altitude. You go is that a problem?
Okay, I got it. Okay, all right, I understand now.
There were some cooler heads in the squadron said, "Hey, the guys get 3,000 hours of great flying." He said, "It's a fighter cockpit. Come on."
Yeah. So you were getting ready to say the coolest part of it was?
I made me forget what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
When they gave you the simulator thing, I thought, man, this is top secret. You're letting us, we're applicants, see the simulator? And oh yeah. So this was too cool. They put you in the front seat, and you are just overwhelmed with where you are sitting in this big simulator. And you go, but you don't want to pretend. You want to pretend like you are cool, calm, and can handle this.
I've seen all this before. Yeah, I could do this.
You don't want to show signs of.
I'm a pilot.
I'm that 8-year-old kid wetting his pants now, standing by that F-106 at the air show. No, you're going in. He says, "I'll tell you what. I'm just going to run you up to altitude, about 82,000 feet, and put you at about Mach 3, so you don't have to worry about all that, and then just see how you like that." I go like, yeah, okay, like it's an everyday thing.
Sure, yeah. Mach 3, fine.
So you're flying the jet, and you're doing all this, and you're watching. You don't even know what half these gauges are. And he says, "How would you? Do you think you could hand fly here at Mach 3.1?" And of course, you what are you going to say? No, I don't think I'm good enough to do it.
Yeah. Of course.
Well, sure. In your best Mickey Mouse voice.
Yeah, sure.
Say, I can do that.
Sure, I can, mister.
Exactly. And he says, "How do you think you could fly if the flight controls augmentation system was off?" And again, you're not going to say, "Oh, well, no, I don't think I'll try that." You go, "Well, sure." So he kept going about 5 or 6 questions. Well, the truth is you cannot fly the airplane with the augmentation system off. The airplane does two loops, and then it breaks in half.
Gets in a PIO, and then it just comes apart.
Yes, exactly.
Pilot-induced oscillations.
You don't know that, so you go, "Sure, I'll try that." So,
sure.
So the next thing that happens is the jet goes, and the simulator goes, and he says, "Oh no!" And you've broken the sim. And he said those exact words, and you saw your whole career just flash before your eyes. The only sim in the whole Air Force. For this jet, you have just broken on a stupid application that you should never even be allowed to touch the part of the airplane. If you get yourself out, if you will just exit the sim now, and your flight suit is sticking to the seat, you're so wet with sweat, you didn't want to show them you couldn't do it. But you're sitting sideways now as an added insult.
Oh, yeah, you got to climb out sideways.
You got to climb out and the sergeant sitting at the control panel looks at you with a sneer like, "Oh,
shaking his head."
Right.
And they send you down the hall to go wait in that room. And I'm sitting in that room going, "All right, your career's over. You should have never, this was a bad idea."
Bad idea.
The only guy that broke the free world simulator of the SR-71. And a little later, they come down and said, you can just leave now. You know your way out. Just leave." Oh, geez. And the next day, you're supposed to meet the commander at the officers' club and have a drink with everybody, and everything. Okay,
you're thinking that ain't happening.
fast forward now, 2.5 years. I'm SR pilot, and we're on our first deployment to Kadena, and we're flying real missions now. And we're at the officers club, and the guy who gave me the sim is standing right there. And we always had 2 crews there. And I said, man, I just got to ask you, how did you, I really appreciate that you recommended me for this job, but how did you, when I broke the sim and I did, he laughed. He said, Brian, we do that with everybody. It's not nobody can fly the airplane in this way we have it set up.
Oh,
everyone breaks the sim. He said, I recommended you with an extra plus. He said, you were one of our best candidates. I said, really? He said, you never said no. I gave you every choice to say, I just don't think I could do this. He said, it was a stress test. It wasn't a flying test. It was to see who was calm under pressure.
Right.
He said, you totally had the attitude I was looking for. It had nothing to do with flying.
Attitude, choices, and perspective, as you said earlier, right?
I was so amazed to hear that. I thought, well, yeah, I've always had that kind of attitude in life, that calm under pressure kind of thing.
I
didn't break this thing.
Thank you. It's a great segue. I want to know, so how big is that cockpit? How large is it?
Actually, it's a good size. I mean, but when you wear the spacesuit, it fills it up pretty good. So
compared to an A-10.
Similar. The A-10 was a big cockpit, and it's kind of similar to that, but maybe not that big.
Okay. And to tell our listeners that are not familiar with this part of aviation, why on earth are you wearing a spacesuit to fly this jet?
Well, you're going above 50,000 feet. You're living at 8 in the 80s. So if anything happened, you had to eject or anything. The spacesuit is supposed to be your protection, but also in the cockpit, if you lose pressurization. Now, the cockpit's pressurized 25,000 feet, so it doesn't have such a differential. But it's still, you're in a hostile environment if anything goes wrong.
The cockpit is pressurized to 25,000 feet. Yeah. Let's touch on that for a second. So for our non-aviator listeners, the normal cockpit pressure, the normal cabin pressurization on an airliner is somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000 feet.
Yeah.
Tops when you're at 38,000 feet in an airliner.
It tops off at 8,000 or something.
Yeah.
No, we were at 25. It started going up as you got above.
That's why he's wearing a pressure suit.
If you did lose all your pressure, you couldn't survive up there for very long without.
No, exactly. And would you mind just quickly, because we've never talked to a U-2 pilot yet. So you're the first high altitude guy we've ever talked to. What are the physiological ramifications of being at altitude and having a depressurization, especially at those altitudes? So,
well, your suit inflates. So they do this to you in the sim as a practice, and the suit goes to full inflation. So now you're like the Michelin man. You can't hardly bend your arms. So it gives you the normal pressure on your body.
But if you didn't have that, what bad things physiologically would happen to you if you didn't have a pressure suit on?
Well, you'd freeze and you would have trouble breathing.
You'd expire very quickly.
Every molecule of air in your body would come rushing out.
Yeah, it would be a very rapid de-escalation of life force.
Yeah. I mean, it's your survival suit.
It's hostile.
Totally, it's a very hostile environment. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Wow, and not only is it a hostile environment, pressure or just physiologically, but you're flying at speeds that are kind of unfathomable for the average ground walking person.
Well, you're doing a mile every 2 seconds.
That is wild.
Or faster. Or faster.
Well, you did go faster than that, didn't you? I think I read somewhere that at one point you pushed the throttles up to outrun maybe something that was pointed in your direction. And you actually increased your fuel efficiency by doing so.
Actually, the faster you went, the better mileage you got. That's very true.
Yeah.
But we were the guys that did the Libya raid in '86 when Reagan bombed Gaddafi. we did the post and pre-strike reconnaissance. And now, if you recall, you're probably too young to remember, but
no, we're not. We are not, my friend.
France would not let us overfly.
So April 15th, 1986.
And I remember that very, very distinctly.
England to the Straits of Gibraltar, into Libya, and then back. It's a 5.5-hour mission. And we're the only crew in history that flew 3 missions in 3 days. The other crew flew 2, and the other crew flew 1, and then they rotated out. So we had 3 in 3 days, and they almost went a 4th day. Reagan called it off, and we were so exhausted. I was refueling.
Were you flying out of Kadena at the time?
No, England.
At Mildenhall, right?
Oh, Mildenhall.
At Mildenhall, not Ben.
Okay.
Yeah, at Mildenhall, and we did that. So we did 3 in 3 days, which was I know what crew did that.
You guys weren't denied permission to fly over France, were you?
Well, yeah, everybody was. So Margaret Thatcher said, "We'll let the SRs launch against Libya," and that was everyone feared reprisals. That's why to this day, 1 SR is on display at Duxford. They got one of all the 30 museums. They got one.
Oh, no kidding! That's the one we lay over right there in Cambridge, right by Duxford, and I've seen that bird. Okay, I didn't realize that bird was there that day. Okay,
you mean it got stuck there? It was awarded because it got stuck there?
When they retired the airplane, they put them all in museums. And
okay.
One, and we said, we'd like you, we trust that you'll take care of it. And
I thought maybe they said, nope, you can't have this one back.
Well, the guys in Okinawa wanted one there too. And we didn't give them one because we knew they weren't going to take care of it. And they'd loot the pieces and rip the stuff off them. And
sure.
Yeah.
So how many hours in the SR-71 did you get?
Only had about 500 hours. You only flew once or twice a week.
That's a horrible question to ask. Let me rephrase this in another way, because so 500 hours in that airplane is really like 2,000 hours in a normal
kind
airplane,
of.
right?
I had about 74 hot missions, and it was almost 4 years.
Good Lord! So I mean, let's think about that. Repeat. I mean, we were flying 3/4 of an hour to an hour at a time, right? Maybe, and doing, sometimes we were going fast, but not any kind of speed
like that. Well, the good part was when your day's off and you didn't fly the Blackbird, you were flying T-38s a lot of times. I was a T-38 instructor, so I got to fly chase on the SR lot, and that's how I got a lot of those cool pictures from my books and all. Not
okay.
So when you say fly chase, tell about that. What does
we had
that
a
mean?
program called Pace Chase, and what that meant was when the SR came back into land and they got subsonic over Mount Lassen area, the 38 would join up on them and just be there in case there was any emergencies or needed assistance. And you had to get checked out and not to fly too close, and where's the danger areas and the speeds of the airplane. Okay. So I was always checking guys out in Pace Chase, and there was nothing illegal or anything about taking pictures from the T-38. We got some beautiful shots at Mount Lassen and Shasta.
Probably most of the SR-71 pictures I've ever seen are probably pictures of yours.
Some might be. Lockheed has a very good collection of pictures because they came out a couple of times and really did a photo shoot of the airplane.
Okay.
But it was rare to get. My collection is the world's rarest collection of shots because they're just a daily routine things that I wish I'd done more.
And if you don't mind me asking, I know the SR-71. So the SR-71 was the recognized version, I guess, and then the A-12 was the CIA version. Is that correct?
Yeah, you got to realize the jet was originally an interceptor. So they had big radar on the nose, and they carried missiles and everything, the A-11. And Kelly Johnson sold this to the Air Force, and they were going to buy 93 of these airplanes, 93 of them. Now, what was the big threat in those days? Well, it was Bison bombers coming across the polar ice cap, bombing America. So everybody was afraid of these Russian bombers. So you needed interceptors. Okay, that's why every jet they built in the 50s was an interceptor. The F-86D, the Scorpion, and even the SR-71. So all of a sudden, the threat changed. It was ICBMs. And the Air Force said, hey, that order of 93 we're going to take? Forget it. We don't want it now. And Kelly was beside himself, and he goes, hey, there has to be a need for a Mach 3 airplane that actually works. And this is insane. You can't just cancel the whole thing. And they said, he said, what if we put a second seat in, take the radar and weapons out, and we can give you a reconnaissance vehicle that can keep track of those ICBMs.
Boom.
The Air Force went, not a bad idea. Nobody else flies that high and that fast. We don't want another Gary Powers situation. Next thing you know, they said, give us 50 of them. And it wasn't even 50, about 35 of them.
Yeah.
So that's why the SR had a life. It would have been in a museum as another experimental.
But did it not have a kind of a high accident rate? Sorry to
not really. They built 50 total Blackbirds, and they probably lost 9 or 10 of them and crashed. But the accident rate per flying hour wasn't that bad.
Okay.
What was the price tag of a shiny new SR-71 to get one off the showroom floor? Yeah, roughly.
I don't know, except that they told us one time per hour cost to run it for an hour is $100,000 per hour.
Yeah, I believe that.
That's a lot of, it's a lot of fuel.
Well, so that brings me to one of the questions I wanted to ask. That's an expensive number until you figure out all the support that it took, because it wasn't just just one crew chief making sure your ejection seat was good to go and fueling it up.
The Achilles heel of the program was the tanker support. So you had 5 or 6 tankers dedicated to each mission, and they did it for 25 years. They were SAC tankers. They had special fuel for us, everything. And then eventually one day in the 80s, and almost up to 1990, they said, we just can't afford to keep doing this. We don't have enough tankers to go around to everybody.
Wow.
And they said the Cold War's over. We can live without it. But they shouldn't have retired it. It should have flown for at least 5 or 6 more years.
I was shocked when they retired that airplane before, and the U-2 is still flying. You're like, you got to be kidding me, right? The mission.
But very inexpensive in comparison.
That makes sense. And you said the special fuel. So what was special about the fuel in that airplane?
You could throw a match. You could throw a lit match into a bucket of this fuel. It would extinguish the match. It had a very low flash point. So the fuel was non-flammable. So we had to have a chemical agent, a triethylborane on board that kind of created a minor explosion in the back end of the airplane to light off the fuel and the afterburn. So it was just an amazing that they could even build an airplane like this in the late 50s, early 60s. It's a testament to Kelly Johnson and his crew.
It is. Yeah. It's Skunk Works, which is a great book if no one's ever read it. By the way, I want you to pimp your books before we're done, because they're awesome read. Let me just ask this. So you alluded to tanker support, and I know that because of the metallurgy on the airplane, in other words, it couldn't be built out of normal metal, aluminum, because of the heat generated from the speeds. So they had to build out of a special metal. And from what I understand, you couldn't take a full bag of fuel when you took off because of the seams. The seams weren't.
No. Everybody gets it wrong.
Can you talk about that? They get it
wrong because that old show Wings used to. The guy said it wrong when he said, "As it takes off, it don't."
Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah. What happened was the titanium heats up, and when they first started flying the jet was expanding about 4 to 5 inches in flight. It just grows because it's so hot.
Yeah.
Well, it was cracking the titanium. So they went, man, we got to figure out a way. The fuel's not flammable. Let's just build expansion joints into the plane and let it leak when it's subsonic or on the ground. The leakage does, but we don't care about that. It's not that bad. So every picture you see of the jet has a puddle underneath it. It's not flammable or anything, but it's a mess. So as you take off, the reason you take off with half a fuel load is simply in case you had to abort with 80,000 pounds of gas, that would be really hard. You just take off with 45,000 pounds and you top off, and you hit the tanker. It has nothing to do with the leakage. It's just so you can take off in a normal manner. You top off when you hit the tanker. And now as you accelerate through about near Mach 2, the jet seals like Tupperware and you don't lose another drop.
You only got to get to Mach 2 for that repeat.
Yeah, right. That's why there's a puddle under every Marine jet, just to prove that there's still oil and fuel in it.
Puddle under the Marine jet is to show all the oil and grease and fuel.
Yeah. But we still have some in it. So.
Yeah, if it's not leaking, you've got a problem.
I've never seen dirtier airplanes. And I went to Red Flag and I parked next to the Marine jets. Like, the F4s were like just streaked with hydraulic fluid and oil.
Right.
And I go, really? You're going to fly that jet? Yes. Well, yeah.
You're damn right. Because if it was clean, I wouldn't fly it. It means it's out.
Dangerous. That's
it's
right.
Not leaking anymore.
So, yeah. So can you tell me a little more about some of the aerodynamics in there? Because I know there was some amazing stuff going on in that engine. Because at a certain point, they couldn't slow down the air enough to hit the compressor, right? Is that how do you say that? The
real headache for the pilot is to learn this new thing where the spikes of the inlets are moving aft as the jet accelerates. Well, that's something new. You never had to work in other jets and all. And
right.
You have to. Now, in simple terms, the big issue is what if one spike gets further back than the other, and you have this disparity? What happens? The nose of the jet. That's right. You have a yaw moment, and at that speed, the yaw moment equates into hydroplaning, and you lose the whole jet. There's not a piece big enough to identify, and that's exactly how they lost several jets in the early days.
Which is
now, guess what kind of computers they had in the airplane?
Which just equates to not finding the pilot in pieces because
exactly.
Yeah.
So there was no computers in the airplane in the early days or anything. So eventually in the 80s, they put computers in to monitor the position of the spike so that if one moved too far aft, the other one would sympathetically abort with it. And it had to move forward to recapture the shock wave. Well, it cost you fuel. It was drag. It was terrible. But you weren't losing the jet.
Right.
So as a pilot, you had to monitor that very closely and carefully. And then once you got to a certain point, the spikes were 24 inches full aft, then you were just like a bullet, except faster. And then you didn't have that problem because they were just aft.
So as far as the throttle goes, as far as the pilot stuff, you're
working the throttle all the time.
But did the throttle control the position of the
speed? It was all speed controlled, 1 5/8 of an inch per tenth of Mach number after 1.4 Mach. These are numbers you will never forget the rest of your life.
Yeah, I bet.
Then you were on a schedule. They were on a schedule for temperature, altitude, fuel, everything. So the jet acted like a ramjet, but it wasn't. It was a turbojet that got all this free air, bypassing the engine and dumping. That's why the faster you went, the more free thrust you got.
That's amazing. Hey,
from a history major, that's about as much as I could tell.
Listen,
but hold on. So, but let me finish that thought. So I'm trying to do it for people that don't understand ramjet, turbojet, that sort of thing. So you've got all this air and you're bypassing your compressors and your turbines and you're throwing it right into the afterburner section.
Right into the afterburner section.
Okay. And then the fuel and the fire mix, and it's almost like rocket thrust at that point, right?
It'll sit up there for an hour and a half, and you the ceramic tile, and then it never overheats, never gets hot. And they found the one J58 Pratt & Whitney that would do it. The Navy didn't want it anymore, and Kelly made it work, and it was just a match made in heaven. The J58 ESR.
Yeah, that's just.
I'm amazed to this day, looking back at that technology, that they could, with a slide rule, figure out some of the delicacies of that airplane that are so precise, and it worked for a quarter of a century. I mean, in 1990, it's still in 1970.
Supercomputers weren't even invented yet. How did they know this?
Every speed and altitude record, and as we're sitting here today, in 2023, it still holds every record.
Yeah,
that's saying something.
Punchy, you said this one time, in a Marine, I was a little slow. Can you tell me this again? When you're doing normal speed in an SR-71, miles a minute are you clicking off?
Well, you're doing about 32 miles a minute. Yeah. Or faster if they're shooting at you.
Like you said, Fig, just like a bullet, only faster. So. And he's not kidding.
I'm sorry, but that just makes me laugh every time I hear that.
Hunting rifle is 3,100 feet per second.
Yeah.
Look at 30-06. We're at 3,200 feet per second. No problem.
That 3,100 feet per second, that's coming out of the muzzle. It slows down rapidly. rapidly.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're cruising at that for hours.
You're cruising at that. Oh my!
We were
God.
not only cruising; it was just loving it at that out there. It flew better. It just knew where it was.
Yeah,
That's
awesome. But the idea that they came up with to throw a spike in the intake that screws with the shock wave so that you aren't damaging the engine and
primitive technology make it work. The best analogy I have come up with, and I use this in my talks. I said, imagine if you want to understand how that technology should have never been able to go all the way through the 90s and be that great. Imagine if you go to the Indianapolis 500 race this year. They always have a pace car with some old car, and you go, that's really cool. And let's say you have a 57 Chevy in front of the pack of all those highly charged ethanol fuel or dual fuel drag racing aerodynamic cars that they race in Indy. And when they come around and the checker flag goes down, the pace car eases off the track. But no, let's say that 57 Chevy stays on the track. And everyone goes, oh, the poor fool, he's just going to be overrun. And let's say the 57 Chevy wins the Indy that year. That's the equivalent of what this jet did for 25 years, built with a slide roll, that the greatest MiGs that they threw at us with the Zoom climb and MiG-25 couldn't even get it. Not one was ever shot down.
So which brings me to the next question. And were you ever flying a mission where you had a SAM or you had a MiG coming at you and you're like, no. Can you talk about that?
We used to see the frozen contrails up over the Arctic Circle. Some of the MiGs coming out, and they try to zoom climb, and then their white contrails would get all puffy and spark. Then you'd realize they're out of gas and ideas, and they're falling out of the sky, hustling to get back home in that frigid winter air. You got 4 inches of throttle left at a 1950 Chevy, and you're going like, geez, John Wayne would have loved this airplane. It's like they can't even touch it. Yeah. And that's how great the airplane was. So
did you ever feel naked?
Over Libya when the whole world was watching and the Sixth Fleet was in the Med and everyone was holding their breath. Gaddafi fired 2 missiles at us, and Walt said, we're trying to hit the turn at Benghazi, and we've got like 14 seconds to the turn. And we got to get to the turn to get the shots.
I think I read this before, but
Walt
continue.
goes, I got a launch signal. We didn't get too excited. He says, I got a confirmed launch. Then we got excited. So we figured that missile's going to take 20, 25 seconds to get to us. We got 14 seconds to the turn.
Yeah, we got 10 seconds to spare.
Max burner, hit the turn. As soon as you turn, that missile has to lead you by 32 miles. It has to recompute a lead point now, and it falls back down into their own town. So we made that turn and it got out over the Med. My hand was still pretty hyper there, adrenaline flowing. I had my hand still up in the forward position. He said, I think you can pull it back now. Kind of exceeded a lot of the numbers you're not supposed to. But what I did was I went to idle over Sicily, and our tanker was waiting for us at the Straits of Gibraltar. You look on a map, and we never touched the throttles once. From there all the way to the tanker. Just as we pulled up to the KC-10, that's the first time I touched the throttles again. And that jet I've never seen an airplane, a thoroughbred, just want to run. And it was just like the movie Seabiscuit where the guy says, okay, now.
Just wants to go.
The horse would know when to go.
This
jet knew where it was and it knew when to go.
Yeah, that jet
didn't want to slow down. I came out of burner, I pulled it back, and the Mach number it just held it right there for a few seconds. I thought, oh, geez.
She just wants to run, buddy.
It did. It wanted to run. It did. And we loved that jet because it got us back.
So as a pilot, controls-wise,
very honest flying jet. It was a very stable.
What was takeoff, rotation, and landing and like?
Well, you rotate, I think, around 210, lift off at 220, the landing around 190, 185.
Attitude, what kind of attitude are we talking?
Yeah, well, just enough so you can't see the runway.
Right on.
So,
try that at night in the weather in England, bub.
Oh, shit. Yeah. So we're talking 1.5, 2 degrees before you lift off and the same kind of landing attitude type thing?
Yeah, you're coming in, but it's got such a great ground effect with that big delta wing that It landed pretty nice usually.
But
But you're coming across the fence usually close to 190. Yeah.
did you have to worry about asymmetrical thrust, losing an engine on takeoff kind of performance
if you
thing?
lost an engine on takeoff, you don't push the other one to max like you do in every other plane. You pull it out of burnout so that you don't Dutch roll right on the runway.
Yeah.
You did that in the sim a few times, and you go, "Whoa!"
Was it okay on one engine at takeoff weight normally?
Well, yeah, you didn't want to do that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could
holding that rudder. Yeah.
And so you said about 195 was the ref coming across the fence on landing.
That's
pretty fast.
That's impressive.
Touchdown around 165.
Yeah,
big drag chute, slow you down.
And were brakes good on that plane?
Drag chute was great. Brakes were good. Everything it was like a big F-106, and it was a big Century Series, airplane.
Okay,
just was the biggest thing I ever flew. It was big, 107 feet long.
That's big. Yeah, that's long. She's long.
I've got them next to the one in the Udvar Hagee Museum there in Washington D.C. area, out near Dulles. And gorgeous bird, though.
Well,
the thing is, that's the other thing that's about it. You look at the U-2 and you kind of go, "Oh, that's neat." It had its ability to do some pretty unique stuff.
Yeah.
But you kind of go, okay, it looks like a great big glider. This thing looks like something out of 2050.
Oh, it looks like a dart.
One of the things I'm most proud of is when I wrote my second book, The Untouchables, I got to interview some of the Lockheed guys that were on this airplane for most of their career, and they never had a voice. No one ever got told what they do and could put them in a book, and they told their families, "I'm sorry, I can't talk about it." Well, I got to know these guys. They stand around in the hangar in their civvies, and you would say, "Who are those guys?" Don't ask. They know the airplane. If you have a problem, tell. So when it was all shut down, it was all declassified. I went to the homes of these guys, had dinner with them, and I interviewed them. They said, "Gosh, no one's ever asked us. It's just so great that you're including our little interview in your book." And they were so happy to talk. Well, there was one guy, he was about 80, 82, and he was all white hair, looked like a little professor. And his wife was there with her gray hair. And we were sitting down in their living room. And I said, "Okay, I got to ask this question I've always wanted to ask. You designed and invented a jet that didn't even look like it belonged in the same era that you built it in. And there had to come a day when the very first one came off the assembly line. And you saw it for the first time. You saw the Star Wars looking thing when you didn't even have Star Wars yet.
Right.
What was that like as a Lockheed guy that he did the rudder? He did the whole rudder section. He said, I said, what was that like when you saw the first one, number one, come off the assembly line and it would look like nothing else we had ever done? And the guy started coughing and wheezing. I thought he was having a stroke. And his wife, I said, "Is he okay?" She said, "Oh, he'll be okay. He gets very emotional about this." I go, "What?" And so finally he recovered himself. He said, "It was the greatest day of my life." He said, "I worked on the stealth fighter. I worked on the U-2. But what we did, we knew we had done something special." He said, you're the first person that's ever asked me that. He said, "It was the greatest day of my life." And I thought, that's the answer I wanted to hear, that I would have thought. There you go. Yeah. Not like, we just built another airplane, because it didn't look like another airplane.
I mean, I'm telling you, if that jet were designed today in 2023, people would look at it and go, "Whoa, that's sharp. That's advanced."
Well, all those guys are dead and gone now. All the 23 guys in that book that I interviewed, they were so passionate about the airplane, more so than the pilots. And they're all dead and gone, and they never ever had a voice to tell their story anywhere else.
So that book is The Untouchables, and it's available on
SledDriver.com.
Punchy,
say it again. I'm sorry. So
go ahead, Punchy.
SledDriver.com.
SledDriver.com. Okay.
Is that your website?
Yeah, that's where they can order the books. Yeah, the bookstores.
Can I ask? And I don't know if this is a number that just get me close, maybe get us close. How many guys flew the SR-71?
90.
90?
Yep.
90. Wow.
And we've had about 15 of them die now. We've lost some guys.
90 pilots. So So, you're kind of unique in the world of aviation. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, sir, but you are very unique.
How so?
Well, there's 89 other guys just like you, but other than that,
there's only 89 others.
Well,
Hey,
no,
can I?
but that's the
I
thing
would
though,
say
is
I
that
enjoyed
your
it.
background and
I
everything
always-
you've done
Yeah.
has put you. No, you are.
No, I always say I
unique.
appreciated it more than the other 89 just because of where I'd come
Yes.
from. That journey, that long journey,
Oh my gosh.
was one that maybe that's why I was carrying a camera around. People thought I was already planning on doing, but no, I just loved the fact that I was near this airplane and I liked photography. And I'm so glad that it was the one guy that appreciated it beyond words was the one guy that took the pictures with it and wrote about it
yes.
in a loving way in the book. My books aren't technical books. I didn't want them to be. I wanted the average airshow fan that says, "What was that like to fly the plane?" to have a taste of that.
Can I back way up? Way up. I took a note earlier in our conversation. You made a note to Blue Angels and Thunderbirds. Tell me about that. Blue Angels and Thunderbirds. What was your experience?
Well,
with
when
those?
I got out of the Air Force, I thought I was going to be like a photojournalist aviation guy because I knew everybody then and I could get backseat rides and do flights. And I hooked up with this company, Mach 1, that did calendars and all. So I was getting backseat rides all over the country in jets and all. And the one thing when I was a kid that I always wanted to do, that I really had this idea when I was a young lieutenant even, I thought no one's done really good books other than Martin Caden did a good book on the Thunderbirds in the 50s and 60s. But no one's done good books on the airshow teams, two teams that affected my young life a lot going to those airshows. So I thought I had this wild idea. And this goes back to my theory of attitude and perspective and choices. And I called up the Thunderbirds. I said, I would like to fly in the backseat during your winter training season to document what has to be one of the hardest training of 3 months in history that no one really knows about or understands how difficult to put that airshow routine together. And I'd like to do a nice book with the photographs and all. And they said, well, we don't let people fly with us during winter training season. Forget that. So I'm out at an airshow one day signing my SR-71 books, and the leader of the Thunderbirds in his red flight suit comes by and goes, hey, my daughter bought me your book on the SR, and I love it. Can you do something like that for us? And I said, sir, I've been asking for a year. No one will say yes. No one will let me do it. And he said, I'll make that happen. And again, in life, it takes one guy to open the door.
Right.
So I spent the whole winter training season with the Thunderbirds. Didn't get to fly quite as much as I would have liked to, but they had some bad weather issues and airplane issues going on. So, okay, the Thunderbird book came out and it was really well received. We sold out of them and the team really liked it. And they made me an honorary Thunderbird. I was so proud of that. Besides being an Eagle Scout and growing up as a Marine kid, I'm an honorary Thunderbird. I thought that's pretty cool. So I get pretty confident now in about 3 or 4 years after I retired, I call up the Blue Angels and said, I have a great idea. You're going to turn 50 years old in 96 and you don't have a good book to show for it. I'm the guy. I don't throw up in the cockpit. I'm one of you. I'm a pilot and I'm better at my photography now. And I want to fly the entire airshow season with you. Well, imagine what a ridiculous question that would be. They hung up on me.
Yeah.
I made 400 phone calls. Everyone was met with, what are you kidding? Got in my car, drove to El Centro, where they do their winter training season.
Right.
Yes.
Like in lettuce field on the Mexico, Canada, or California.
Very familiar. Very familiar.
Went down there, and there's no one there. I'm the only truck in the parking lot, and 6 Blue Jets land. And here comes the public affairs officer running out of the shack going, who are you? What are you doing here? And then he goes, I know you. You're the guy on the phone. You're the guy that keeps calling here. And then I thought the next sentence was going to be arrest him immediately. And he said, damn, you showed up. He said, we have athletes, senators, famous movie stars. Everybody wants something from us and no one gives anything back. You're the first guy that said you wanted to do a book for us. He said, I'll give you 10 minutes of my time. went in his office. I had my Thunderbird book.
Okay.
And I said,
Here's what I'll
listen,
do for you.
this could be a 2-book set. It just is so great. And he's thumbing through my Thunderbird book while I'm talking. I think he's not even listening to me. And
No,
this
he's
is
looking
like
at the pictures.
just the greatest photo opportunity of your life. And you're wishing he would just listen to what you're saying. And he goes, you can stop talking now. You've got a big fat error in your book. What?
Greatest air show
Yeah.
team,
in
right?
one of the pictures, it said, the formation doesn't get any tighter than this. And he said, and then I'll never forget the words that he said to me. He said, you obviously have not flown with the United States Naval Demonstration Team. And I thought, is this like cease and desist? What did I say?
Exactly.
We can change this.
And I said, the light bulb came on over my head. And in that 2 seconds, my entire life was changed. I said, if you can make this project happen, we could set the record straight. And there was a moment of silence, like, when you go into burner in a Century Series jet, there's this little 1/10 of a second that was nothing, all the fuel dumps into the burner second before it lights off, that we were in that little moment. And he said, how soon can you get here and get all your gear here? And I said, well, I'll be here tomorrow if that's what it takes. I am the only guy in history, and this will never be done again. We broke every rule in the Department of Defense. And I flew with the team for an entire year.
In 1996?
Yeah, with Lawman.
No.
Yeah, Lawman was on the team. Yeah,
No, wait.
absolutely.
Was Lawman? Was that
Yeah, Lawman was 95, 96.
Dino, Snooze, and Lawman.
96. You're right. That's the. So you know the funny.
I was there in 94. I had to do it before they turned 50.
So you're
I
in
had
90.
to be there in 94.
Oh, that was Lawman's first year.
Yeah, his first year, because he was doing crap, and they were giving him crap every day at the debrief, and he took it so well. He was so good. And Dino goes, "Hey, Lawman, did you see that big blue thing next to your jet? Yeah, that was me. Don't hit me." Lawman. It was great. It was the greatest year a photographer, a journalist could ever wish to have.
What is that book called?
That's called Blue Angels: A Portrait of Gold. It's out of print. We sold them all so fast, and we have to redo it because the book is done with film. And we got to digitize the whole thing. So
you can't get it right now. You can't be got.
No, you can't. They're out of print. And I have like one left. I can show you. It's on the floor here. Here, hold on.
Can I come to your house and get it?
Right, exactly. That's because I was going to ask him what's going to take to get a set of all his books.
What do we got to do?
Yeah.
Hey, how about that Lawman? Lawman's on. We got Lawman on print. There it is.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
That's Lawman's left wingtip right there in the top of the. Oh my god!
Lawman was a great guy. And all of them were great guys. But I'll tell you a little secret. The cover shot of the book. I shot 80,000 pictures that year.
Yeah.
This was the first roll of 36 in Bend, Oregon. The first show they let me fly. That ended up being the cover shot. It was probably picture number 22 I took of the whole year. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Beautiful book. We got the whole, here's the whole team marching down.
Hey, so
was Lawman out of step?
Hey, so Punchy, since you got to fly with both the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels, and I don't want you to pull any punches.
You're going to say who's best. I know.
No, I don't want to say who's best. Who flew a tighter formation?
Well, it's a good question, and you may not like the answer, but you have to answer with a caveat: is that they fly a different kind of diamond formation. The Navy flies a deep stack.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So when they turn, it looks like they're closer. If I put my hands behind the other one,
sure.
But if the Air Force flies a shallow stack, which is a little more difficult sometimes, especially for number 4, it's a little tougher because you're closer to the jet wash. I'm not going to say the Thunderbirds are better because they fly a harder formation. I'm going to say they each fly just a little bit different kind of formation. When they gave me the stick one day at practice, he said, I want you to feel the pressure on the stick so you can write about it good. And so there's all 6 airplanes in the Delta. They did some maneuvers. He said, hey, you're pretty good. I said, well, yeah, I did it for 20 years. I hope I can still do it. But I was really nervous. And He said, why are you flying up so high? He said, because that's where you're supposed to fly in formation. He said, no, we fly down here. So when you turn, it looks like
step down. Yeah.
So from the field of view of the spectator, it looks
exactly.
perfect. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the Thunderbirds fly some more precise and difficult things that you don't appreciate as a spectator. The Blues have more showmanship, and they know how to impress the crowd more, I think.
Let me ask you this: being in around both of those teams, both of those guys, I know from personal experience that they're quality individuals, and you probably can't. If you could change the shirt on the individual, you probably wouldn't know what service they were in. Is there actually, I know the answer to this question, so I'm going to rephrase it. If you were to throw a dart in a room and hit a Blue Angel or a Thunderbird guy, who would be closer to the bar?
I didn't see a lot of that on either team. I thought I'd see a little more partying and reception stuff. No, they're in the bed early. They're at the weight room at 0800. I'm not saying I was disappointed. I was impressed that they were so dedicated and serious about their job. And when I saw what the job entailed and rode along with them, I go, holy mother of God, this is not fun flying at all. It's hurt.
Lawman related that to us. He said, you know, that was his first day on the team. Dino asked him, what's the best part or the worst part of being a Blue Angel? And he's like, you're traveling a lot. He couldn't come up with the answer. He goes, no, it's the flying.
Yes.
You are going to regret coming to work to fly this airplane.
It is so hard, and intense. I had such respect for those guys. I mean, I taught this stuff for years. I was good at it, but man, that's
very stressful.
That is the ultimate.
Very stressful.
It's highly stressful. It was stressful sitting along watching it.
I cannot imagine. It must have been just as exhausting, riding without having to be the one holding the jet in position.
Film, I was changing rolls at 36, everything, but. I tell people in my talks, I am the luckiest guy you will ever see at a podium because not only I got to fly the world's fastest jet, to fly with both teams, something no one else has ever gotten to do. They will never do that again.
No,
and to have that opportunity to just see it and get to smell it and breathe it and touch it and do books about it. I'm so lucky that I got to do all those things as a guy that was told your flying days are over. And,
right. Even more so.
Truly unique. And very, so can I, you're a very humble man. You're a very humble aviator.
You have to admit, I'm a fortunate guy.
And I before I ask you this question, I just want to say I'm very humbled and very honored to talk to you and hear all your stories. And I really, truly feel like I am in the presence of royalty.
A sky god.
Aviation royalty. Sky god. There we go. Well, that might be a title. Sky god. No, we won't do that to you.
I'm going to ask you a question, and if you don't want to answer it, it's okay. But can you tell our listeners what Air Force accommodation or medals that you were awarded throughout your career?
Oh, I don't even remember half of it. I think the meritorious service was probably one of the higher ones, a bunch of air medals, and there was a couple other
bunch of air medals. Hold on a second. Let's talk about that. A bunch of air medals. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, you don't get air medals just for being a pilot.
For flying airplanes.
You don't get air medals for that.
Well, I looked at my mess dress the other day because I actually have an opportunity to do something really special at the end of this year. I'm not going to tell you, but it's just too amazing.
Whoa. That's just mean. That's just mean to say that, Punchy. What a tease.
Well, and I may have to wear my mess dress, which I haven't worn in 30 years, and also I'm going to get a new one. Obviously, I won't fit into the program. But I was
probably fit right into that next.
I was looking at the all the medals and things, and on some I just don't even recognize, but I know that they were like meritorious service or joint service accommodation and things like that. We did some oddball stuff, and So no, I didn't do any, distinguished flying cross or Medal of Honors or any of this. I've tried to tell people I'm not a hero.
No, but you have a very distinguished career, sir. Very distinguished.
You could call it many things. I would say a very fortunate, lucky, and blessed career to get to do all the things. I didn't fly for 20 years and then go fly with the teams and survive the A-10 when we're killing guys every week. And just to survive the hospital. So that's lucky to me. That's not distinguished. I had perseverance. I kept calling the Blues 400 times till they finally relented, and they're glad they did. They loved the book, and they said it's really, we did something good for us. And guess what? There hasn't been a good book on the Blues since then. They never had a good
or the Thunderbirds.
Really, yeah. So I never think great or distinguished or heroic or infamous. I think really blessed and fortunate that my distinctly special Marine personality got me through, carried me through all of the things that I've gotten to do. And I proved my theory that you can do more than you think you can do. And I tell people you can go weeks without food, days without water, even a few minutes without oxygen. But the second you lose hope, you're done. So you just don't give up. And that's my motto. It's
very profound.
And it's
Indeed.
True. And I've lived it, and I don't even know how I did all the things we're talking about here today. That's why I find it even hard to describe.
I do. I know exactly how you did it because that was your ordained
It was
path.
It was. I was the Marine kid that was going to be able to do it.
Yes, sir. That's
I remember my high school coach telling I had a red cap with an M on it because my dad got it for me at the base, and when we were practicing, we got to wear our own caps, and he said, yeah, I got that Marine kid at third base. He's kind of salty. The Marine kid, He just, and I go, what do you mean by that? I'm a nice guy. I didn't get into a lot of fights or trouble, but I was on the dean's list. I was an honor student. I liked school. I wasn't but I would say things sometimes that they didn't want to hear. And I had a commander once tell me, he says, you're my best instructor. I'll leave you in the cockpit till the day you retire, but I will never promote you because you are a loose cannon. And I thought, that's a compliment.
I've heard that before, repeat.
That's okay. I mean,
I'll take it.
I was lucky to get through a career without being court-martialed half the time and things I said or did. But my dad taught me some great, valuable lessons and everything. And he was a great man. And my mom was right when she said, you didn't pull the short straw. And it wasn't unlucky. You were chosen. You're chosen for this mission because you were the guy that would survive it and then turn it into something positive. And I said, wow, okay, well, I hope I can see that someday.
Right.
And I did. Yeah.
And now you do, but yeah, still, that's.
Punchy, wow. I got to tell you, I'm just sitting here. I'm kind of out of questions.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm unprepared.
Yeah. So let me take it then, Fig, because I'd like to chat about. I know on Facebook it's Brian Shul Photography. That's Brian Brian Shul Shul Photography. Find that page, and you will see some of the most stunning nature photos.
That's been my most fun. My most fun thing now is doing my bird photography. And people say, "How did you get into doing bird photography?"
I used to fly this airplane that had a long-range camera.
Birds are like airplanes to me, and they're just way more interesting and fascinating and have a personality. And once you understand flight and you appreciate flight, when you watch birds, you just don't ever watch them the same anymore.
That's right. They do everything that you wish you could do in an airplane.
I wish I was a Harrier. When I watch them fly the field out there, they kill with elegance. I mean, they are just impressive flyers.
Yeah. When you see birds of prey in action, it's truly if you're an aviator, you are in awe at their skill. I've seen
Harriers stop on a dime, do a hammerhead stall, and roll down and catch that mouse all within just a heartbeat. You go, how'd you do that? Well, they pulled one wing in and put left one out.
That is incredible. I'll tell you the other bird that's interesting, and I didn't see any there, but I don't think you're in the area where you can. The one of the more fascinating aviators to me is the pelicans. To watch those guys use ground effect.
Oh, no, I've got tons of pelicans.
Do you? Okay. I hadn't seen those.
Pelican is the very first bird I started with that I had no intention of being a bird photographer. And I bought this new lens that I was going to shoot air shows with. And I was visiting my parents in St. Pete where they lived. And what's in St. Pete is the pelican.
Oh, yeah.
So I needed something to practice with my new lens. And I went down to the pier and I thought, these dumpy, stupid looking birds, they're slow enough. I'll just, these birds are just ridiculous. So I started shooting them to practice focusing on. I fell in love with them. They were such good flyers and such incredible.
Oh my
They
gosh.
come right down the pier.
Yeah.
Right?
To watch them dip their wingtips in the water as they fly and then to dive in and get fish. And
I met a pelican beak to beak one day I'm leaning on the railing of the pier. And I thought, head on shot. This is good. This is good. And I thought he'll move at the last minute. He'll turn away. No, that's his pier. He didn't turn away and his head just missed smacking me in the nose and his wing just gave me a wet wipe right across the. I thought, how cool is that? That was so cool. No, he's not going to move for you. Dumb.
Yeah, I'm not moving for you, pal. You amateur. I'm a professional here.
I got into my hawks and harriers and eagles and stuff, but now I'm doing series on the smaller birds, which are fascinating. It's just a great thing to do in your retired life. You can do photography.
That's awesome, Punchy.
I like being out in nature.
Yeah.
It is great stuff.
As the introvert that I am, I like being away from the crowds. And,
right.
I just want to tell you what a great pleasure it was to listen to your stories.
I wanted to do some contribution to your show that was positive and not.
Oh, are you kidding me?
This is right up there. This is awesome. This is one of the greats. This is one of the greats.
It's a first. We've never had an SR-71 pilot on, and we probably, because there's only 89 left to go, we probably won't get one. Well, unless you can give us a reference, we probably won't get one. And thank you for your service. Thank you for your service in Vietnam, and thank you for your service to our country.
All voluntary. I didn't want anyone taking my seat. That was,
there you go.
Yeah, and quite frankly, not being an Air Force Academy or an RTC guy, getting a pilot slot in the Air Force is kind of a big deal. So
I'll tell you one of the great quotes. I remember so many great quotes in my career, and one was when I went to the recruiter right after college. And I said, okay, you can have me now. You've been sending me all these stupid drafting notices. And I kept telling you I was going to join and everything. So here I am. I want to go to pilot training. And he says, how many hours of flying do you have? I said, none. He says, did you have ROTC? I said, no, I didn't even do ROTC. You have a degree in aerospace? And I said, no, I'm a history major. And I got a degree in anthropology.
Let's hear it for history majors.
He looked at me and he said, what makes you think we're going to waste all our money training you how to fly? And I looked at him, I said, because I want it more than the other guys. And I actually said that.
Right on.
And he just looked at me like, the same thing the doctor said to me in the hospital. He says, I like your attitude.
Yeah,
he says,
I like your attitude.
I'm going to let you go. You might not make it, but you
I like your attitude. I like your attitude.
Yeah.
That's how my whole life was. And I talk a lot about attitude in my talks today because I'm a living proof that it's a bigger factor in people's well-being than we may think sometimes.
No, I think you're spot on that. I really do.
You guys started your radio show. You didn't start with the idea that, well, it's probably a fail. No, you said this could be something good.
We're going to make this work. We got to get the great aviation raconteurs on tape, get their stories down.
Today by how well all your equipment worked at the start of the show.
Yeah, right. Ouch. I'll take that.
The funny thing is it was about a year ago today. Well, it was in April. It was the end of April that Repeat and I were at a Harrier anniversary, 50th Harrier anniversary.
Oh.
And 50 years of the Harrier in the Marine Corps. And we started talking. And I came to the Harrier reunion with a digital recorder because I wanted to record some stories, because I thought I wanted to make a podcast, not knowing how I was going to do it. But Repeat is the guy. And he said, hey, so we started talking. The next thing you know, here we are. We're
here we are a year later, 54 shows in, and maybe 55. I lost track of the number.
Life is what you make it. It's really life is what you make it. Once you get your hand on the stick and throttles and all the,
Punchy, I just appreciate you coming on and talking to us, because you do this all the time, and you probably I hope you don't feel like you're talking to a broken record. I just really I just want to express the fact that how much we both appreciate you sharing your stories.
That's exactly right. And
if I don't share the story in a positive way, then all that I went through didn't have any real value. It's like it's my way of making it of some value. All that stuff that at the time you just thought, this is like the worst thing that could. And
right.
You realize it's not.
Well, that's very eloquently
perfect.
Said. Very
that's perfect.
Eloquently said. And
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, let me step in then. And again, thank you for your service to your country, to your fellow airmen.
Can't think of a greater country to serve.
Right. Amen.
No matter what the news tells us.
Amen. No, to find a better one. There isn't one and hasn't been. Thank you to you, sir. Thank you, Fig. This is awesome. And the opportunity to do this has been a wonderful blessing. Thank you to Dave Hamilton over at the Mac Geek Gab, who helped us put this all together. Yeah. Thanks to our sponsor, Robin's Bird Brain Designs, to help you get custom gifts out. Thoughtful custom gifts. Would you like a coaster with your squadron logo and your call sign, with your fraternity or sorority logo on it? Anything that you need a custom gift for, Robin's Bird Brain Designs will etch that for you and make it right. A special thank you this week. We just started our Patreon page where you can go and help support this show financially. This show doesn't come free to us to put out to you. It's a labor and a cost of love, but we're now beginning to the point where we're needing to ask for a little help. We started the Patreon page, and thank you to our first two patrons, Chase Cole and Earl McCoy. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate your pledge to help support this show. If you want to ask us any questions, you can reach out to fig@sotherewas.us or me, repeat@sotherewas.us. We're planning a 75th show about getting into aviation, learning to fly. Whether you're 15 or 55, get out to the airport and do it. If you have questions about how to do that, how it's going to work, we ask that you reach out to Sticks@sotherewas.us. Sticks is going to help us put that show together, and he's helping us with a bunch of admin support on things like our glossary page. You heard terms here tonight that you don't know what they are. Shoot us a note, and we'll get that term defined and up on the glossary page for you. And with all that being said, all I can tell you is till next week, stay safe and check six.
I was crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
And like the song says, it's over.